at my unfaithful wife's company party. Two security guards suddenly seized me and dragged me into a secluded room. Standing there with a smug expression was a man who smirked and declared, "Your wife is mine now. When I'm around, you'll keep your distance. When I'm not, you can pretend you have control over your life. But if you cross me, I'll destroy you." His words cut deep, shattering my world in an instant. But what he didn't realize was that his threat would ignite something far greater, a vengeance that would rip their lives apart. I had been married to Rachel for nearly 8 years. We had always been close, sharing inside jokes, supporting each other through tough times, and planning a future together. Or so I believed. Rachel worked at a prestigious tech firm, constantly occupied, often staying late at the office. I used a joke that her career had overshadowed our relationship. Never my worst nightmares did I imagine it would come to this. Everything unraveled at the company's annual gala, a lavish event teeming with high-ranking executives, dazzling lights, and overpriced champagne. I never minded attending. It was just another obligation of her job. But that night, something felt off, arriving earlier than expected. I scanned the grand hall and spotted Rachel engaged in an intense conversation with a man I didn't recognize. They stood too close, their laughter too intimate for mere colleagues. At first, I dismissed my unease, convincing myself I was overthinking. But then I noticed it, her hand lingering on his arm just a moment too long. I debated confronting them, but doubt held me back. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was nothing. But then I saw the way they exchanged a secretive glance, the way her fingers drifted toward his chest. And in that moment I knew she was no longer the woman I had married. Later that evening, after too many drinks and countless unanswered questions swirling in my mind, I found myself alone in the hallway, struggling to process what I had witnessed. That's when 2 security guards approached me. Before I could react, one grabbed my arm. "Hey, what's going on?" I demanded, my heart pounding. One of them, speaking in a flat, emotionless tone, replied, "You need to come with us." I resisted briefly, but it was useless. They led me down a dimly lit corridor and into a small, secluded room. As soon as the door shut behind me, I saw him, the man Rachel had been with earlier. "Hello, Adrian," he greeted me with a smirk. "I've been expecting you." At first, I didn't recognize him. But then it hit me. David, one of the company's top executives. I had heard his name before, but that was the extent of it. I stood frozen, my heart hammering in my chest, breath coming in short gasps. David leaned back in his chair, clearly savoring my discomfort. "Your wife belongs to me now," he declared, his voice slow and deliberate. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He chuckled, leaning forward with an air of complete arrogance. "You heard me. When I'm around, you'll keep your distance." He paused, his expression darkening. "When I'm not, you can pretend you still have some control over your life." His words sent my mind into chaos. He wasn't just threatening me. He was toying with my entire existence. But it wasn't just his warning that struck me. It was a cold, calculated way he spoke, as if my life were nothing more than a business deal to him. Then he smiled darkly. "Cross me, Adrian, and I'll ruin you. Your career, your reputation, everything you hold dear." The next few hours passed in a haze. The guards escorted me back to the party, and to my disbelief, no one seemed to notice what had just happened. But I couldn't shake his words, nor the realization that came with them. David had orchestrated this. Rachel had been cheating on me for who knows how long, and now they wanted to ensure I wouldn't stand in their way. My own wife had betrayed me, and now she was part of a plan to destroy me. But they underestimated me. I had always been the quiet one, the man who let things slide. Not this time. This time, I would make sure they paid for what they had done. For years, I had let Rachel's long hours and late nights go unquestioned, convincing myself she was merely dedicated to her job. I had let life pass me by instead of fighting for what I truly deserved. But that ended now. Determined, I began crafting the perfect escape. Using my expertise in cybersecurity and a few old contacts, I erased every financial trace of myself, wiping my presence from my bank accounts. I scrubbed my social media clean, leaving no digital footprint behind. Then I orchestrated the perfect suicide, a disappearance so convincing that no one would doubt I was gone. Rachel and David had to believe they had won. They needed to think they had escaped the consequences of their betrayal. By the time Rachel returned to her daily routine and David tightened his grip over her life, they had no idea that their reckoning had already begun. I had already disappeared, assuming a new identity in a distant city. Free from everything that once bound me, I answered to no one but myself. From the shadows, I watched as life continued in my absence. Rachel moved forward without hesitation, as if I had never existed. She worked late as always, spent her nights with David, and built a future with him without a second thought. But while they carried on as though nothing had changed, I knew something they didn't. Absence wasn't just an empty space. It was a weapon, and I knew exactly how to wield it. Simply vanishing wasn't enough. They had to suffer for what they had done. I didn't want them to merely move on. I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal, to fully grasp the destruction they had caused. I wanted them to understand they had shattered a man who had once trusted them without question. Over the next few months, I built a new life. I found a home in a different city, changed my name, and took on a remote job at a startup. I altered my appearance, growing a beard, reshaping my identity until Adrian no longer existed. Every trace of my past was erased. But even as I settled into my new reality, I knew I wasn't finished. When I chose to strike back, it had to be at the perfect moment, when they least expected it. That opportunity arrived when I learned that David's company had just merged with one of the largest corporations in the country. He was scheduled to speak at a prestigious event to announce the deal. It was the perfect stage for my return. Dressed inconspicuously, I slipped into the venue, blending seamlessly with a crowd of wealthy investors and business elites. David stood on stage, confidently presenting his vision for the company's future. He boasted about his success, his expanding fortune, and how his personal and professional achievements had aligned flawlessly. He spoke like a man who believed he was untouchable. From the back of the room, I watched him bask in his own arrogance, the anger I had buried for months boiling beneath the surface. As the applause echoed through the hall, I made my move. Calmly, I stepped forward, closing the distance between us as he finished shaking hands with high-profile executives. Then I stopped just a few feet away. When he turned toward me, I saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. The brief moment of disbelief before realization set in. His expression shifted from confidence to confusion. "Adrian," he murmured, his voice unsteady. I smiled, watching the fear creep in. "Yes, David," I said, my voice steady. "It's me." His face drained of color. "You're supposed to be dead." I nodded. "That's what you thought. You were certain I was gone. But what you never realized is that I've been watching everything." I took another step closer, lowering my voice. "And now, you and Rachel are finally going to pay for what you did." A heavy silence fell over the room as I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. Documents that would change everything. I handed them over, watching as David's hands trembled while he took them. Inside were copies of every illicit transaction he had tried to conceal, bribery, money laundering, fraudulent schemes he believed were buried. But I had infiltrated his financial networks, uncovering every corrupt deal he had made. His eyes darted across the pages, his face turning ghostly pale. What is this?" he whispered, barely able to hold himself together. I met his gaze, my expression unreadable. "This," I said calmly, "is the end of your career." He swallowed hard. "You're bluffing." I smirked. "Am I?" Leaning in, I added, "These files have already been sent to the SEC, your investors, and a handful of journalists eager to expose your dirty secrets." Panic set in. His jaw clenched. His breath grew shallow. "You wouldn't." I tilted my head, my voice cutting through his fear. "Oh, but I already have. You and Rachel thought you could ruin me. Instead, you sealed your own fate. Within hours, David's world collapsed. Federal investigators launched an official probe into his company, and the scandal spread like wildfire. News outlets seized the story, broadcasting his corruption for the world to see. The once celebrated CEO was now a public disgrace, a manipulator, a fraud, a liar. Investors abandoned ship. His company stock plummeted, and the highly anticipated merger crumbled. Everything he had built, his career, his fortune, his influence, was reduced to ashes before his eyes. But I wasn't done yet. I had one final move to make. One last blow to ensure Rachel felt the full weight of her betrayal. I reached out to the one group of people who had devastated her the most. Her family. I compiled every piece of evidence. Her affair with David, the lies she had spun so effortlessly, the destruction she had left in her wake. Along with it, I sent a personal letter detailing how she had sacrificed everything we had built together for greed and lust. The fallout was immediate. Her family cut her off. Friends distanced themselves. One by one, the people who once stood by her turned their backs. Rachel, who had thrived on admiration and validation, was left utterly alone. For her, that was the ultimate punishment. Not just losing her job, not just losing David, but losing the very foundation of her existence. Months passed. I had started fresh in a new city, surrounded by people who knew nothing of my past. My life had been rebuilt from the ground up. And then one evening, I saw her again, not at a corporate event, not at a high-end cafe, but in a dimly lit, run-down bar. She sat alone, staring at her phone as if waiting for a message that would never come. Her once flawless appearance had faded. Her eyes were hollow, her posture slumped. She looked like a mere shadow of the woman I once knew. When she looked up and saw me, recognition flashed across her face. She parted her lips as if to speak, but no words came out. I held her gaze for a moment, then gave her a small nod. No anger, no gloating, just acknowledgement. And then I turned and walked away, because I'd already won. Betrayal isn't just a wound, it's a decision. And when you push someone too far, they don't break. They come back stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than you ever imagined.